3,000 miles. Time for an updated review. Alright, full disclosure, I don't actually have 3,000 miles yet. I don't know if you'll be able to see it in the video. I have 2,969, but I will definitely hit 3,000 miles on this ride. So I figured it was time for an updated review. The last in-depth review I did was at 1,000 miles. I tried to do one at 2,000 miles, but I had technological difficulties with my mic, so that one was a bust in terms of a review. Still a fun ride, obviously. So today I'm gonna do a 3,000 mile review, and this is all once again gonna be sort of stream of consciousness. I'm going to talk about things as I think about things, and the first thing I am thinking about is gas mileage. And the reason I'm thinking about that is because I am almost out of gas. This thing actually started blinking at me yesterday, about 30 miles from home. So hopefully I'll make it to the gas station. But on that subject, the 300L gets amazing gas mileage. One could argue too good of gas mileage in my case, because I just never think about it. And the tank on this is over 3 gallons. It gets over 70 miles to the gallon. So easily over 200 miles on a tank, and I just forget about it to the point sometimes where I find myself out in the middle of nowhere with very little gas. So obviously that is a huge pro, but for me, I just need to remember to check my gas gauge before I head out on big rides. Need one of those pilots checklists, you know, that they have to go through before they can take off. And it's, you know, probably most people don't need something like that, but I'm kind of a space case sometimes. So I'm gonna get some gas here, and then we'll continue with the review. All right, full tank of gas. The world is my oyster, or at least the next couple of 100 miles are my oyster. So yeah, the gas mileage is incredible. I'm usually sitting around 77, 78. The last couple of days I've been out on a rural highway with the throttle pegged, going as fast as I could, just mostly to see what it was like. And you know, so I drive 50 miles with the throttle pegged, and it's pulled my average down quite a bit. I'm sitting at 75 average, which is nothing to complain about. Probably today we'll see that average go up. Now this average is over the course of, I don't know, the last 500 or 600 miles is the last time I reset it. So keep that in mind. And like I said, I'm going to be driving more slowly today. I'm not going to hit super fast speeds just because it makes my mic go wonky. I haven't figured out the magic sauce yet for high speed motovlogging. But I'm guessing that its amazing gas mileage is not the reason many of you came here to hear my thoughts at 3,000 miles on the CRF300L Rally. And obviously I'll be talking about the Rally. Most of what I say is the same for the Rally and the 300L non-Rally. But let me start off with the reasons why I got the Rally instead of the 300L. The biggest one is what we've just been talking about, the bigger tank. They still don't have a decent sized aftermarket tank for the 300L. I can't remember which company, but somebody came out with one that was just a little bit bigger than the stock 300L tank. And you know, I know a lot of 300L owners and potential owners were disappointed. There's some other companies that are saying that they have one in R&D or, you know, some stage of production. So I hope for their sakes, the people who want the bigger tanks will be able to get an aftermarket one soon, but I didn't want to wait. I got this as soon as I heard it existed. I started looking for one, and it didn't take me a terribly long time, luckily, to find one. I know some people are still waiting for their 300Ls or 300L rallies. But so bigger tank for me was huge. I like the rally tower that I like the windscreen, and for whatever reason I feel like the windscreen does better fixed on the tower than it does when it's mounted to the handlebars. At least based on my experience with a similar windscreen that was mounted to the handlebars of my XT250, this does a lot better. And I just turned on my brights. So I like the windscreen. I actually like the fairings. I like the look of the rally. I like the headlights. In the United States, the non-rally version doesn't come with LEDs or LED headlights, where the rally does. The headlights, in my opinion, are fantastic on this bike. And the rally just fits my overall kind of aims at motorcycle riding in general. I'm more about exploring and doing longer rides that are not very technical or not often technical. And the rally has just been great for that. So if it was just about single track riding and I just wanted to dual sport so I could be legal to get to the track that I wanted to ride on, then the 300L probably would have been the better choice. But I've done some pretty decent single track and technical riding on the rally, and every time the bike has exceeded my abilities. So it can do everything that I want to do on it and quite a bit more. And before I get too far into the review, I want to make sure that you are aware of my background as a dual sport rider. If you haven't seen any of my other videos, if you have, you already know, but I have been riding dual sports for just about 3 years now, and I absolutely love it, but I'm a rider with 3 years of experience. So keep that in mind. If you're looking for an old pro who's been riding a motorcycle for 40 years and can give you all the nitty-gritty details about the specs and why they're great or why they're bad, this isn't going to be that. This is just going to be me talking about my feelings about this bike. And spoiler alert, there's not going to be a lot of negative conversation going on with myself here, because I really just adore this thing. So let's see, I'm going to start just kind of with the standard 300L things that everybody talks about. First of all, the suspension. It is indeed very soft. I weigh about 185 pounds right now, and I've got maybe 25 pounds of mods on this thing right now. I'll talk about the mods later. My gear, my jacket, my helmet, my pants, probably another 20 pounds. So with all that, it gets a little bouncy sometimes. When I'm doing a stretch like this, which is a lot of what I do, I have no complaints about the suspension. Yes, when I hit kind of a big dip, I kind of go up and down for a while, but it doesn't bother me. So The suspension's not bad for 95% of the riding that I do. It's certainly not bad on the street for me. It's not bad on gravel or dirt roads, fire roads, anything like that. I do feel it a little bit when I get into more technical things, when I'm doing kind of aggressive single track, which I don't do very often, but I do sometimes, especially since I got the crash bars and the aluminum skid plate, which again I'll talk about later. But since I feel like the bike's a little bit more protected, I have ventured into occasionally some more technical things, and I feel the suspension a little bit more. When I did my first review at 1,000 miles, I'd had the bike for about 3 months. I bought this at the end of September last year, and it's middle of August right now, so just under a year I've had this, and so I'll hit 3,000 miles on the stock suspension, and I have enjoyed every single one of those miles. So if you're worried about, you know, the suspension talk and is it even functional if I don't upgrade the suspension, in my opinion, it's totally functional. You can have an absolute blast on this bike for as long as you want, forever if you want. That said, I have ordered some upgraded suspension. I finally decided to pull the trigger on some better suspension. I was getting ready for a trip that actually I had to cancel for me, and I knew I was going to be loading a ton of luggage on, and I didn't know how technical the terrain was going to be, so I figured this is a good time. Bike's paid for. You know, it's easier to swallow that upgrade after a little while, where you're not doing it all at once, buying the bike, buying suspension, buying, I don't know, exhaust upgrades or whatever you want to do. It gets a little painful to do it all at once, but I did order. I got the Rally Raid Level 1, because I don't want the bike to sit any higher than it does stock. Again, if you saw my other video, you'll know that for me that was a concern with the height of the bike, because I'm 5'9", which is terribly short, but I've got very short legs for my height, 29-inch inseam, and I was worried about jumping from my XT250, which is like 31-inch seat height, I think, to the Rally, which is 35.2 or 3, I think. But it's totally fine for me. I'm used to it, but I don't want to increase it farther than it already is. So I got the Rally Raid Level 1 suspension front and back. I just got notified that it should be here tomorrow, which is awesome. A little bit apprehensive about the install, but you know, I thought about taking it somewhere and having a professional do it, but I've watched a few videos on it. I think I'm going to tackle it, and you know, I probably won't make a super step-by-step video about it just because there's others out there, but I'll probably do an overview. So, suspension, totally workable for as long as you want. You can have a blast on this bike as is, but I did finally cave and get an upgrade, and I will, in a future video, tell you if I think that upgrade was worth it. So, suspension's out of the way. Exhaust, I mentioned that. I'm still super happy with the stock exhaust. I know that's the first thing a lot of people do, is they get an aftermarket exhaust, and then they get an ECU flash and people rave about it. They say it helps with the twitchy throttle, which I'll mention a little bit later as well. They say that it helps with low end torque. I mean, people rave about it, but I just have never had any complaints with how the bike runs, how the bike's geared, how the power is distributed across the transmission or the gears. So I'll never say never, especially after I just got the suspension. But I don't plan on ever doing anything with the stock exhaust or ECU. See, another thing that comes up a lot, I see it less often now than I did when I was first looking at this bike and when I first got this bike, but you'll still see it pop up if you're looking at a 300L, and that's the 5K rattle. And when I did the 1,000-mile review, I said I didn't know if I wasn't sure it was there. I didn't know if I believed in it. I do hear it now, and ironically, I hear it better now that I've started wearing earplugs every time I go out, which to me seems a little odd. But I think the earplugs just kind of cut out a lot of the frequencies that are not the rattle, and so I can hear kind of a little tick 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 every once in a while at about 5K. And it just does not bother me at all. If you watch my video about how I got started in motorcycles on the CT70, I'm riding around my CT70, and if you watch that video, you'll definitely understand why the the 5K rattle on the 300L is not a problem to me, because that little thing just, you know, rattles your teeth apart as you ride it. So it's never been a problem for me. I've never spent much time on anything that doesn't have one cylinder. So maybe if I had, the rattliness of this thumper would bother me, but I haven't. And actually, I took a turn that I didn't want to take. So yeah, 5K rattle, not an issue for me. Another thing people mention that is honestly a little bit Greek to me, just because it's so far out of my concern radar that it's never even been a blip. But people talk about the subframe being welded to the frame rather than bolted. I guess the CRF300L had a bolted on subframe, and this has a welded on subframe. So if that's one of your concerns and you want to hear somebody's intelligent thoughts about it, you'll have to find a different video, because I suppose if there's a situation where you broke the subframe, then it could be more expensive because you'd have to replace the whole frame, not just the subframe. But I'm not gonna spend any more time talking out of my butt about something that I know nothing about. Another thing people talk about in the States, at least, in some countries, the ABS is standard, or not just standard, required. But in the United States, it's not. And so I've seen that question pop up in Facebook groups numerous times. Should I do ABS or not? Again, it's my opinion. I'm a huge fan of the ABS. And I don't even turn it off when I'm off-roading. Maybe it's because I never learned to ride in a way that requires me to lock up my rear wheel or anything like that. But it's been... But I like it. I like the security of knowing that if I slam on my brakes when a deer or a cow or an antelope out here in the middle of nowhere pops out, I'm not going to, lay my bike down, or at least it's going to be less likely. In fact, I'm going to test the ABS right now. I'll slam on my brakes on this dirt road. I love it. So, yeah. I mean, I don't know what I think I was doing about 50 miles an hour, and this is dirt. It's not terribly loose, but definitely looser than asphalt, and it doesn't feel like, it's just going to let me slide into something against my will. And maybe as my skill level progresses, there will come a point where I do actually turn off the rear ABS when I hit aggressive stuff. Time will tell, but my opinion on the ABS is I love it. So if I had to do it over again, and I would wait. If there was only one with non-ABS available, I personally would wait for one that had ABS. It's worth the $200 or $300 more for the peace of mind that it gives me. Comfort. I'm still pretty happy with the seat. I've never had any problems with it. I know some people take off the strap that runs across the middle of the seat because they don't like it. I've noticed that a couple times, but really only if I'm thinking about it. I kind of like that strap there just as an extra grab point if I need. But totally fine seat for me. You know, it's not a lazy boy, but it's not a wooden plank either, in my opinion. It's just fine. What else? We got handlebars. You'll notice that I do have new handlebars, and the reason I have new handlebars isn't because I didn't like the old handlebars. I have heard of people bending them when they tip. People swear that they're super flimsy. So that may have kind of swayed me, but when I decided to put on my heated grips, which again I have another video on if you want to see that, me talk about that, but I just figured I may as well do the handlebars at the same time. They're not very expensive, and so that's why I have different handlebars, and the handlebars have been fine. But I will say, and this is, I don't know if it's the handlebars' fault. I don't think it is. I've noticed that, you know, my hands do get numb after a lot of riding. I don't think it's because I don't feel like I'm gripping the handles too tight, or I'm at an ergonomically bad angle or anything like that. I think it's just partly the vibration of the bike and partly just me getting older. I noticed kind of tendonitis type of feeling in my elbows. And when I switched out these handlebars, I didn't notice any difference in the vibration. But it's possible in retrospect that maybe, you know, the weights that were inside the handles, the stock, reduced the vibration a little bit, and more than these do. So we'll see. I ordered some inserts, some anti-vibration inserts for these handlebars. They're going to be here in a couple days, and I also got a ROX anti-vibration riser that I'm gonna try, which will also lift up my handlebars a little bit. I don't know if I'll like that or hate it, so I'll try it. If I hate it, then I'll take the riser back off and sell it. But that's a long way of me saying that the stock handlebars are fine. I changed mine, and it may or may not have increased the vibration nominally to my hands. Not really sure on that. The rear view mirrors, the stock ones I thought were just great. They work great as mirrors. But when I did the crash bars, I kind of planned on starting to venture into things that were a little bit more technical, and since I had these double takes, I threw them on. And I've tipped it over a couple of times in rocks. Who knows if the stock ones would have broken, but these ones certainly didn't. And the crash guards did their job, protected the bike. I haven't cracked any fairings, got a couple little scuffs, but nothing that doesn't look like normal dual sporting activity wear. So yeah, the mirrors are great. What else do I have to say about stock stuff? I personally think the stock foot pegs are just fine. A lot of people get wider ones, more aggressive prongs on them and things like that, but I don't have any problem with them. Sometimes I take out the rubber inserts for hard off-road stuff, but usually I even forget to do that, and it's never really been a problem. I've never felt like my feet slipping around has been the weak point in one of my rides. The display, I think, is fantastic on this bike. It's not super bright, so, you know, if the sun hits it or something, it could be a little bit difficult, but I've never really had an issue with it. It shows me everything that I want to see, nothing that I don't. Obviously, my speed, my odometer, my miles per gallon, the gear I'm in, my RPMs, my fuel gauge. It's all great. I know that at least with miles per gallon, I know you can change that to display different things. So you know, there's some customization there that can happen, but I've always liked just what it shows me by default. Another thing that can be changed on the display is the gear shift indicator. When you hit, I think by default, I haven't changed mine, it's 7,000 RPMs in a downshift. Yeah, so I'm at 8,000 now, and you'll see that light. Yeah, so it starts blinking at 7,000 miles, or 7,000 RPMs, and then at 8,000 it goes solid. So I do know that that's something that you can change if you are a rider that, you know, likes to keep things at high RPMs all the time, and you get a bike like this, you may want to adjust it so it starts blinking later in the rev cycle. So what else did I say I was going to talk about? Oh, the Twitchy throttle. That really, my opinion on that hasn't changed since my first review, in that it doesn't bother me at all. I noticed it when I first started riding, but I just kind of started instinctively, you know, using the clutch and the throttle in tandem, and it's not something I ever think about now, and I don't feel like it's twitchy at all because I'm kind of easing more into the throttle with my clutch. And so again, it's one of those things that I've heard that that an ECU flash can fix if it just drives you crazy, but my personal opinion is that you should just learn to drive it as it's built. Just have more control over your machine when you're working the clutch and throttle together, and it's just instinctive. To me, it feels, you know, I'm more one with my bike. Another thing to talk about regarding stock setup is the tires. Obviously, I'm just coming up on 3,000 miles. Right now, I'm still on the stock original tires, and for me, they have been just good, just great, you know. I've been thinking a lot about what I want to replace them with, just because I think, you know, fairly soon I'm going to want to do that. I'm just going to hop off here and just kind of show you what the tires look like after 3,000 miles and almost a year of use. So, I mean, to me, this front tire still has quite a bit of use. Not in any hurry to replace that. The rear one is a little bit more worn down, I mean, but not horrible, really. I don't know, might be able to get another 500 or 600 miles out of it. I've been thinking a lot about changing them out just because it's kind of fun to try new things, but I really don't need to yet, I don't think. Let's see, while I'm off the bike, let me go over all the mods that I've done, several that I've done since my last review. I talked in my last review about wanting to get these crash bars, and obviously I've done it, and I have crashed on them, and you can see kind of some scuffs on the crash bars themselves, which is where the scuffs should be. You do see a little scratch there on the fairing where a rock got to it, but nothing major. On this side, you can see a little ding in my gas tank where a rock got to it, but that's not something that any kind of crash guard would have protected unless you have some sort of a cover for your gas tank. But I've crashed on both sides on this bike, and all you see is a couple of little scuffs there on the lower fairings. I did get the aluminum skid plate that may have been frivolous. I mean, I never had any problems with the stock, even though it's thin plastic. I hit some stuff pretty hard in it, and it never cracked. Just got some scuffs and gouges in it, but I did that. If you've seen the video, you already know. At the same time that I did my chain guide over there, that one did break on one of my tip overs, and so I decided to upgrade it with something a little bit more sturdy than stock. And that's a Zeta chain guide. And what can I say about that? It's guided my chain well for the past month or so. And anyway, I got them from CRFs only, and they have a deal. I think it's $150. If you spend that, you get free shipping. That was 60 something, and so I decided to pull the trigger on a thicker, tougher skid plate at the same time. And I really like, this one's from Flatland Racing, and I just love their products. I've used them on my XT250s and have always been really impressed with their products, their welding, just the look of it. They always have slits cut out, and that's kind of a trademark, probably not literally trademark, but it's a Flatland Racing thing. If you see a skid plate with fins like that with 3 cutouts, it's probably a Flatland Racing skid plate. I like the look of them. And the fitment has been great on all of the products that I've installed. Let's see, beyond that, I, again, wrap around hand guards. Those are new. I said I was going to get those, and I did. And I went with the triple tree mount. So this, most hand guards that I've done in the past have just a clamp that goes up here, and it's just, a tension mount. This bolts onto your triple tree, and it makes it in a fixed position, makes it super solid. So I'm happy with that, especially that's a Zeta product. My handguards themselves are just cheap Chinese Zeta knockoffs, and they have protected my levers and hands just great. So I would do those again. In fact, I did do these on my little CRF125F that I got recently. I put these exact same handguards on. I like them. Then just a comfort upgrade I did is these Oxford heated grips. Not really a big deal right now when it's 92 degrees out at the moment, but really extended my season. In fact, I didn't ever really stop riding for any extended period of time over the winter. I'd go out, just short half-an-hour rides, even through December, January this year, just mostly because this was a fairly new bike, and I just couldn't resist getting out and riding on it through the winter. So those were fantastic for me. Got this rear rack that when I have tipped it over, it's just been great because it's got a handle built into it. Fits my tail bag just right. I'll put links to all these things that I'm talking about because I can't remember the names of all the products necessarily, but this is a plastic rack, which I was a little bit hesitant about when I was looking at it, but it's super strong. Never had any issues with it. Strong enough for me to pick up the bike using it when it tips over. Nelson rig tail bag. There's 3 sizes of this flavor of tail bag, and I got the middle one. So I don't think it's quite big enough to put a full-size helmet in. The biggest one is, if you unzip the extender, it comes up. I was going to do a tail tidy, and even though I don't like the look of the stock tail, I think I'm going to keep that because anytime I go through mud and stuff like this, it just gets caked under here, and I'd just rather not have that flipping up on my back or flipping onto the rider behind me. So, as ugly as the tail is, I think I'm going to keep it just for its functionality. I did add this is another cheap Chinese USB adapter thing that plugs straight into the auxiliary port that lives under here. So that just gives me a couple of USB plugs. I've got one plugged into my phone. This is just an old iPhone 8 that was network locked because my son bought it on eBay. and it was stolen or something. We tried to return it and the guy just disappeared, so we just had this extra iPhone. So it's my GPS now, so I just keep it plugged in all the time to the USB. I can't remember the name of this mount that I'm using, but it's super solid, works great. I wouldn't recommend using it if you are using it with a phone, with an iPhone especially, that you care about the camera on. On other mounts that are similar to this, I've broken my camera on an iPhone, and it's a very common thing. You're vibrating and it just shakes the mounts loose on the camera, and everything's just super vibrating when you look at it through the camera. So great if you have a phone. This is a great solution, cheap solution. I daydream about getting, a Garmin Montana, I think, or something one of the Garmin that has the InReach incorporated. If you watch Itchy Boots, her trek to Alaska, that's what she's got. She's got a GPS from Garmin. Can't remember the model, but it's got the InReach built in, and I have obviously two different devices. I love the InReach. It gives me a lot of security as a satellite tracker and SOS beacon if I crash. So even if I don't crash, my wife can see where I am at any given time, whether I have cell signal or not. And if I get in trouble, I can push that button and the cavalry will come racing in. This other camera that I have, I wonder if this camera's still going. This is just a clip-on Garmin mount that my brother-in-law gave me, so that's just so you can see me from this angle. Woohoo! And I think that is it for mods. Giant loop tank bag, if you consider that a mod. I love that. Just the right size for me. And yeah. So in regards to the tires, obviously I don't know exactly, but I would say that that is 60% off-road, 40% on-road use. So if you're kind of judging how long you can expect the stock tires to last, that's how long they've lasted for me. Most of the off-road has been pretty mellow, with a smattering of more technical stuff mixed in when it suits me. And speaking of on-road riding or on the asphalt, a couple of people have asked me, I've seen the question come up in various groups and forums, but people want to know how this bike does on the highway or at highway speeds. And it's kind of a tough question to answer depending on where you live. In Utah, a lot of the freeways have a speed limit of 85 miles per hour, and this is not the bike for that kind of speed. The fastest I've ever been on this bike was 90 miles an hour one time, going down a hill. The wind was probably at my back. What's 90? Holy cow, I saw 90 on my speedometer. Before that, the highest I'd seen kind of on a flat, when I just had the throttle pegged for quite a while, was 82 miles per hour. And again, that was not an easy, comfortable speed to get to. So for me, 70 miles an hour is kind of the sweet spot in terms of the upper end speed according to the speedometer. Now keep in mind that the speedometer is a little bit off, like every other dual sport I've ever ridden. In fact, it's less off than most dual sports I've ridden, but when I, like for instance right now, the speedometer is 44, 45, and the GPS is showing 43.2. So it's not terribly disparate on this bike with these stock tires, stock gearing. It's not far off, but if it's showing that I'm going 70, I'm really going probably 67 or something like that. but I'll cruise along, speedometer showing 70, 75, and I can do that for, you know, an hour with no issues at all. It just feels super fine. I do notice the gas mileage going down when I do that, obviously, but for me, 70 miles per hour is a great sweet spot. So if all of your riding is going to be on roads that 70 is fine, then I think this is a great pick for a commuter. With the caveat that when you're going 70, 75, you don't have any poop left in the engine to pass somebody. Like if you're going 75 and somebody's going 73 in front of you and you just like to get past them, you better have a long clear space to pass them, because you're not going to be able to zip past them like you would on a bigger bike. I talked a little bit about the gearing of the bike. To me, the gearing on the CRF300L is just fantastic. I mean, it just feels smooth. First, second, third, fourth, fifth, all are kind of just linear, and there's never like a weak point. And there's never a time also, there's enough overlap that there's never a time that I don't feel like if I want a little bit more torque, I can't, you know, downshift. And if I want, you know, some fewer RPMs, I can't upshift and just kind of like take it easy. Sixth is long. You've probably heard. I usually don't go into sixth unless I'm going at least 55 usually. It's just my personal preference. It feels a little sluggish if I go into sixth. For instance, you know, say I'm at 45 here and I go into sixth, then it feels like it's kind of a little sluggish to get up to speed. It can do it though, but I really like that. It's, you know, it's an overdrive. So when I am going 70 miles an hour in sixth gear, it feels fine. And 70 miles an hour in sixth gear is right at that 7,000 threshold on the RPMs. So that's when, you know, if I hit 7,000, it starts blinking at me. But that blinking thing never bothers me. Again, if it bothers you, then, you know, you can bump it up to 8,000 and you can go 70 miles an hour all day long without ever getting nagged to change to a seventh gear, which doesn't exist. 2,999 miles. So another thing about the transmission is the clutch. Clutch on this bike is just fantastic. It's a slipper clutch. I don't really know what that means. If you do, great. But all I know is that the bike is just, the clutch is just great. It's intuitive. It's soft. It doesn't wear my hands out pulling it in and out for hours at a time. So, you know, and my XT250 is also really easy to ride, really easy clutch, but this is even easier than that. So in terms of learning how to ride, if you're looking for a new bike, this is a great one to learn on in terms of ease of, you know, shifting and just overall comfort riding. My only one, oh hey, 3,000 miles, woohoo! This is now officially a 3,000 mile review. Anyway, so my only caveat to saying that this would be a great first bike to learn on if you've never done any sort of riding at all, or if you've only done street riding, my one caveat is that if you have really short legs like me, or even shorter legs, then it might be a little bit intimidating. Do some more work on the ABS there just for kicks. It might be a little bit intimidating to just be tiptoeing on the ground. So right now I'm kind of on the balls of my feet. So I'm not like ballerina, you know, toe dancing or anything. I'm on the balls of my feet. These are pretty thin boots, so I'm not getting a lot of lift from them. And if this was the first bike I ever rode, I think that would make me a little nervous. The Yamaha XT250 was just very confidence inspiring, being able to just be totally flat-footed even with a little bit of bend in my leg. But that said, and the soft suspension kind of helps. You get on this and it kind of sinks down. But I personally wouldn't want it much higher than this. So if you're shorter than me, you have shorter than 29-inch inseam, keep that in mind if you're new. But if you got longer legs, 31, 32-inch inseam, you'll probably be able to pretty much flat foot this thing, and it would be, in my opinion, a great bike to start on. Shorter legs, I personally would start on like the XT250 or a TW200 if you're in the dual sport market, you know. Even easier would be like a CRF300L big wheel, like I just got my daughter. It's straight dirt, so if you need something street legal, that's not the bike for you, but it's just a fantastic bike to learn on. I'll probably do a video at some point about my opinions on starter bikes. Anyway, in the beginning of this video, I did mention that there wasn't going to be a lot of negative things that I had to say about this bike, because I love it, and that's true, but I will point out a couple of things that in my perfect world would be different out of the box on this. So first of all, obviously the suspension, since I just spent a bunch of money upgrading it, it would have been nice if it was a little bit better out of the box. But of course that would have raised the price. It probably would have raised the price of the bike more than what I spent on the suspension, and it more than likely would have not been this specialized suspension that is made to keep the bike at its current stock height, you know. Every suspension upgrade that I've seen on the market for this bike raises it up an inch or two, which would have been a little bit out of my comfort zone. So the fact that I can get an aftermarket suspension that's spec'd to the height that I want is great. You know, if I bought this bike with and it was taller because it had better suspension, I probably never would have fallen in love with it, or it would have taken me longer to fall in love with it, because I would have had to, there would have been a learning curve of like driving with only ever having one foot on the ground when I'm stopped, and that's for me not very confidence inspiring. I like to at least be able to tiptoe both feet. That said, it would have been nice if, you know, they added a little bit of adjustability more than just preload, to make it a little less pogo sticky in certain situations. So that's the biggest one, and you're going to hear that any review you watch. That's going to be the number one complaint. I can guarantee it. It's going to be the suspension. But I just want to reiterate, don't think, oh, this bike sounds great, but I don't want to buy it because it's useless or non-functional without an immediate suspension upgrade. I don't think that's the case at all. Again, I've put 3,000 miles on it for real now, and just had a blast every one of those miles. And I'm not looking back at the last 11 months thinking, oh, if only I would have had the suspension upgrade earlier, then all of that would have been more fun. It's been an absolute blast. I have zero complaints about my experiences on this. So I wouldn't hesitate to buy this and enjoy it for as long as you want, maybe forever, without upgrading the suspension. Let's see, what else would I change if I had a magic wand? Obviously I like the wraparound aluminum firm handguards that I've added. From stock, it's just got the little plastic flaps that will protect you from wind a little bit, but wouldn't protect your levers or your hands much if you ran into something really hard, like the ground. I'm tempted to say the skid plate just because it's you know, thin and plastic, but again, it never let me down. So again, if you're thinking you need to immediately upgrade the skid plate if you buy one of these, then I don't think you do. I think if you're buying the Rally, I would get a skid plate if I was getting the 300L, which doesn't come stock with anything. But if you're getting the Rally, personally, I would say you're going to be fine, especially if you're new and you're just kind of getting into riding and you're building up your skill set. I don't think you're going to be tackling anything that requires a beefier skid plate right off the bat. I would love it if they would have put LED other lights on. You know, the Rally, as I said, comes standard with the LED headlight in the United States. But I'm always jealous when I see pictures of the Rally in other markets and they have the LED turn signals. Not only does LED last longer and is probably brighter, but they just look cooler. I mean, they're thinner. And these bikes, these ones are fine. It's not like I hate them, but the other ones do look cooler. And probably the nitpickiest of all nitpicky things about this bike, whew, you're not going to be able to see this in the video, but this is a very, very steep hill. But yeah, the most nitpicky thing for me is I don't love the color scheme. It's kind of growing on me, the red, but something about the blue on the front fender especially just looks cheap to me. See that little blue nose? I may pull that sticker off at some point. I've thought about getting the black fender off of the black version of the CRF300L Rally. I think the 2018 year had a black one. So I've thought about doing something like that, but obviously it hasn't been enough of a thorn in my side to do anything about yet. But beyond that, I cannot think of anything that I don't just love about this bike. I mean, sure, for me personally, if it was, 2 inches lower, that would have been nice. But as I said, I don't even notice it anymore. In fact, when I get on my XT250, it feels like a mini bike. But yeah, so for terrain like what I'm riding right now, if this is the type of stuff that you plan on riding, and this looks like, oh, that's perfect, that's exactly what I want to do, then again, I don't think you need to rush out and buy and spend a ton of money on upgraded suspension. Unless there's other reasons you need it. For instance, if you're a pro rider and you just know what you want and you know the way you ride it, you're going to like it better, then by all means. Or if you weigh 250, 300 pounds and you're just constantly bottoming out on everything, then you may need to do it more quickly. But, I'm not terribly light at the moment, unfortunately. And so, again, 185. And the terrain that I'm on right now, again, it probably doesn't translate in the video, but this little section, it's pretty steep. There's kind of some rocky areas. And the suspension is not any sort of an issue at all. So if the type of riding that I'm doing right now seems great to you, then my advice would be to hold off on the suspension upgrade until you really get a feel for whether it's going to bother you or not. Alright, this one looks like another pretty steep hill, and not too bad. See, it's those one after another whoops. I think they call them whoops. That really get me. That really convinced me to finally order the suspension one. I run right in some of these areas that are just one after another, whoomp, 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 whoomp. And it gets a little fatiguing on the legs when your legs are having to be the entire suspension. And also, I like tinkering with my bike. I like doing upgrades, and so I just figured it's time to pull the trigger and see if it's hype, or see if I you know, me as a semi-novice rider can really tell any difference. I may get on them and think, you know, I don't like this any better, or maybe I'll like it less because I'm so used to the soft suspension. But I will try to keep my, you know, rose-colored glasses off when I ride it, and let you know what I really think. You know, it's possible that I could eat all my words and be like, oh my gosh, you guys, seriously, do this immediately. This makes it so much more fun. But I really doubt it. I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but where I ride, I'm always between 4,800 and 5,000 feet of elevation. I mean, just when I'm around my house like this. Obviously, I'm a lot more if I'm going up a canyon or up a mountain, or, you know, going to a specific destination. But most of my videos, I'm at 4,800 to 5,000 feet, which may or may not have an effect on my performance, my speed, my gas mileage. But if you want that data point, there it is. Let's see, something I haven't talked about is how the bike has been maintenance-wise in the last 11 months / 3,000 miles. I've taken it in, I took it in for, I bought kind of a package from the dealer where, you know, that includes the first 600-mile maintenance and as many oil changes as you want for 2 years. And so I've taken it in 3 times for oil changes. And that's it. No problems. The only, I guess, sort of maintenance thing that I've had, which is just typical with any bike, is after one of my rides, in fact it was the one that I crashed a couple times on, I thought that the clutch was making a weird noise. Like every time I downshifted, it would like kind of make this like sound, and it made me nervous. So I kind of planned on taking it to the dealer and having them check out the clutch. But thankfully for my ego, I decided to look around the bike first, and I noticed that the slack on the chain had more slack than it should. So I looked at the manual to find out what the slack measurement was supposed to be, and sure enough, there was too much. So I tightened that up to spec, and that was it. It was just the chain slapping a little bit, I guess, when I was changing speeds kind of abruptly, you know, engine braking and things like that. But beyond those things, oil changes and chain slack adjustments, which are absolutely 100% normal maintenance. Aside from those things, I haven't done anything to the bike, haven't had a single problem with it. It just runs like a top. Never have to worry about it. Starts right up every time, hot or cold, doesn't matter. So it's a Honda. It's a new Honda. It's not the newest anymore. Now there's a 2022 model, so but the only change on those is the price tag and the number on the title. It says 2022 instead of 2021. But and this is the point in the video where I lost my mic. The battery died on my helmet cam. You can see the power cord that I stretched from my camera to that USB port that I talked about that I added up there on the tower. The good news though is that I was pretty much done saying all the things that I had planned on saying, and even more, as you can tell if you've lasted this long through the video. Congratulations. This next little section I just talk a little bit more about how it feels to go 60, 70, 75 on the bike. Nothing that I hadn't already talked about. The only other thing that I mention in this stretch is the heat that comes off of the bottom right section by your leg. I mentioned that in my first review video, my 1,000-mile review, and back then I did it in November, and it didn't bother me at all. I didn't even really notice it much. But I will say that driving through the summer in 90, 100 degree weather, especially on roads like this where I'm going faster and the tarmac is kind of hot, I notice it more. It's still not a deal breaker for me. It's not like a painful heat, but it's definitely more noticeable than it was last November to me. So keep that in mind if that's a concern for you. Once again, a fix for that would be to get an aftermarket muffler that doesn't have a catalytic converter in it, if that's legal in your area or you want to risk it. And I've seen people put different types of heat shields around that area. So those are options if that's a concern. Again, I think I've said everything that I wanted to say. If I missed something that you were hoping I'd say, leave me a comment. I'll be sure to respond quickly to it. As always, thanks for watching. Subscribe if you feel like it, and ride safe.